I work part-time as an assistant rural carrier for the U.S. Postal Service. And I've done so for 6 years now. So for 6 years, I've had a legitimate answer to that familiar question. So what do you do really? And that happens to be carrying packages and delivering them for the Postal Service. It's mostly Sundays and it's mostly Amazon packages, as you can well imagine. I'm kind of low on the carrier hierarchy. I only carry packages and parcels, and I help all the other carriers out. I never have touched the mail that's above my pay grade. But as a rural carrier, I'm assigned to go this way or that way, depending on who needs assistance and who's overburdened with packages. So it's a form of service to my fellow carriers, and of course, a great service to be able to go out and bring people the things that they are wanting or needing. As a assistant rural carrier, an ARC, I am going out to all of the routes throughout Buncombe County. The city of Asheville is in Buncombe County. Buncombe County is, some of you may know, the eponymous source of our common slang bunk and bunkum, because back in the 1820s, our representative to Congress was famous for giving long, irrelevant, meandering speeches on behalf of the people from Buncombe. And so it became a dismissive term to say, oh, that's just news from Buncombe. And then it gets shortened to Buncombe, and then it becomes mere bunk. But I digress. I love going from one route to another and covering the entire county. And I find myself going along big highways with high-rise apartment buildings, and then up into high McMansions on hilltops overlooking the Blue Ridge Mountains, or into 1960s ranch neighborhoods or planned suburbs, and then, of course, way off the beaten path into some of the interesting clusters of trailer parks and old cabins and homes that are tucked into strikingly hidden spaces all throughout the county. As I meander about and in my lowly position as the assistant rural carrier, I'm often reminded of the fairy tale hero Boots, who is the seventh son of the king, and as such, all his inheritance is just leftovers and hand-me-downs, such as his big clumping hand-me-down boots that he gets his name for, clomping about. His princely brothers have gone off to seek their fortunes, and as is common in such fairy tales, they have all gone astray. So Boots petitions his father, the king, to go off as well, and his father permits him to go. He goes off on a broken down old nag, the only horse remaining for him. He heads out, he knows not where, to seek he knows not what, but he knows he must go, and so he does. And he goes with kindness. As he's riding along on his horse, he turns aside from an anthill so as not to disturb it, and even bends over to give a crust of bread to the ants. Small act of kindness for him, but great for the receivers. As he's riding along, he comes upon a nestling fallen from a tree, and he helps it back up into its nest. Again, a small act for him, but great for the receiver. He comes upon a fish that's been washed ashore, gasping for breath, and he gently slips it back into the water. Small act for him, but great for the receiver. And he travels in this way, and I think of him and I feel that fairy tale feeling of the meandering hero offering small acts of kindness, because every time I deliver something to someone, it's a kind of service for them. Just last weekend, I brought a box up to a family lane, which is a kind of a dirty dirt road cul-de-sac with about 4 or 5 trailers around it. The box was clearly marked as a changing pad with a belt for a newborn baby. And I brought the box up to the door, and the door opened. The young man greeted me excitedly. Oh, great. It came just in time, he said. We've just come back from the hospital with our baby boy. Oh, there was this wonderful moment. I said, congratulations and good luck. You're going to have your hands full. And he was grateful and said, thank you. I said, you're welcome. And he took that little box into his house. And I thought of the new father and the new mother and the new child as I drove on to my next stop. The warmth of that exchange kept me warm all day long and warms me now, even as I tell you about it. I feel these little acts of kindness as a delivery man. And oftentimes they are acts of kindness that are directed to me. In the hills outside of Marshall one day, I was up on a high hill in a house with a lovely home garden. The elderly couple there proudly showed me all around the garden and would not let me leave until I had taken 2 bags of fresh picked okra, which served us well for months thereafter. Another house off of Old Leicester Highway, I brought a long and heavy item of some kind out of the back of my truck, and the gentleman there receiving it told me about how he'd just come back from a hunting trip in Louisiana and had smoked his own venison jerky and offered me a big bundle of it, which I graciously accepted. Tasted a little of it, was nice and peppery, but it was not really on my diet. So I brought it back to the station and I gave it to one of my fellow carriers, Ballard, who greatly appreciated it and told me for days thereafter how good and he and his wife enjoyed it. Acts of kindness like this last December, as things were getting very heavy, and the holiday season, of course, is a very heavy time for all of the carriers. So we were working 10 and 12-hour days, and it was after dark, and I had still had about 40 stops yet to go. I parked the truck to one side of the road and delivered my package to the other. But when I came back to the truck, I was greeted by the woman who lived in the house on the opposite side, and she offered me a package of 2 thick alpaca wool winter socks, just out of nowhere and for no apparent reason. But oh my goodness, I guess she saw my need and how well my feet have appreciated that, especially with our recent Arctic blast. So acts of kindness characterize so much of the work that it makes the work endurable. Sometimes it's hard, but it always is rewarding. Now, Boots is going along in this same manner, but he comes across a challenge to a greater sacrifice. There is a starving wolf across his path who begs of him his horse so that he might feed on it and become strong again, and offers to take the horse's place. And well, the old nag is ready to give up the ghost, and Boots dismounts the horse, and the wolf eats of the horse and becomes hale and strong and becomes Boots' steed thereafter. He rides off now on his further adventure to his destiny. I'm riding off not so much on a magical wolf, but in a mail truck, and you've seen them around the neighborhood, the old mail trucks, not the new ones that are starting to pop up. These trucks are called LLVs. It stands for Long Life Vehicle, and they are long-lived vehicles and probably have long outlasted the life they were originally intended for. Big, heavy metal boxes that handle the rural roads well. But the thing that's magic about them is that they display the U.S. Postal Service. Now, I don't have a uniform. That's, again, also above my pay grade. But when I ride around in that truck, people know I'm coming to deliver packages. And every time I drive down a neighborhood and people are out, they see me, they wave, they smile, they're all happy to greet me. And sometimes when I'm driving around my neighborhoods in my own car, I forget I'm not in the truck and I'm waving and smiling at people who are looking at me sidelong like, who is he? What's that all about? Because I came to be in such a habit of being so neighborly. But the truck opens doors, if you will. And it's always nice to hear somebody shouting out, thank you, as I walk away delivering a package. And I'm able to shout back, you're welcome. Have a good day. Now, Boots's journey takes him to a land that has been devastated by a powerful and dangerous giant who is invincible. The land is smashed and battered, and the giant holds captive in his ruined castle a maiden, a princess, a pretty common motif in fairy tales. When the giant is away, Boots sneaks in and the princess hides him. And then when the giant returns, the princess teases out of the giant his secret to his invincibility. The secret, it turns out, is that the giant has taken his heart out and hidden it far, far away where it can come to no harm. Now, with this new information, Boots jumps on his wolf and heads off for a year and a day to the great lake and the island and the lake and the chapel on the island and the well and the chapel and the duck in the well and the egg in the duck and the heart in the egg. He recovers the giant's sequestered heart. And these days, especially these days, I feel like that magical adventure happening around me because the land here is devastated as if attacked by a heartless, powerful giant. Everywhere I go is the scree and the debris from the great storm and floods that we have endured. And still the land is wrecked and scarred. And still the memory of all of the fallen trees and the tangled wires and the piles of trash and the broken homes and the smashed cars everywhere. There is a sign of the trauma that we are still recovering from here in Buncombe County. And with that trauma comes a kind of a wariness in the land, a wariness of the stranger. And not long ago, as I was going off of the highway and then down one of the roads of Owl's Ridge or Mabel's Branch or Melody Rose, one of those Possum Trot, one of those country roads that takes me off the main highway onto a potholed asphalt road that devolves into a gravel way and then rises up as a rutted dirt road and ribbed, and my sturdy LLV bumping noisily up the hill. The wariness closes in as I drive around the piles of brush and the sprawling remnants of great trees, and the signs appear, foreboding. Private road, no trespassing, beware of dog. And I can't afford enough ammo for a warning shot. And I come up one of the steep roads to a wired fence with a gap and a winding dirt drive going steeply up to a cabin on a hill that looks somewhat looming and foreboding like a giant's ruined castle. But I've got a heavy box I have to deliver, and I want to get as close to that house as I can. So I pull up the drive to the porch, and there on the front porch is the last sign. It says, either you're bulletproof or you're stupid. Well, I'm not bulletproof, but I am stupid. I parked the truck and I got out and I went around to the back, lifted the gate, and I had to take this box, a little bit larger than one of those mini fridges, and it felt as heavy, and tip it back so that I could get the fulcrum on my shoulder and get my knees underneath it and lift it up and bring it around the side of the truck. And when I came around the truck there on the porch was an old mountain Meemaw in her house dress, leaning on her walker with a big smile. I said, hello. She said, hello. I said, where can I put this for you? She said, well, inside the door would be nice. I said, sure. So I made my way up the steps to the door, and I knelt down and dropped the bottom of the box to the door sill and then tipped it up to the inside. And just then, in from the dark came a tall, young, burly man who lifted the box and took it further into the house and then came back and said, thank you. And we stood there for a while, the three of us, and exchanged news. How are you doing after the storm? Well, as you can see, we had some trouble over there, but we're starting to clear it up. And you all got your water and your power up pretty quick. Well, we managed to pull it all back together. Well, I'm glad to hear that. And then we parted with the ritual mountain farewell. Be safe now. Have a good one. Yeah, you too. Have a good one. I went down from the porch and around the truck and got back into the car, still smiling, the smile that I had smiled for them, but it stayed with me as I did a 3-point turn to get out of the drive and came back down past those signs. And as I drove back down out of the woods and out of that tortured landscape, I thought, I've passed the test. I braved the threshold guardians, the gargoyles of the cathedral, and I stood for a moment in the sanctuary. Well, Boots grabs that heart, rides his wolf back, and in the traditional version of the story, he confronts the giant and crushes the heart and so destroys him. But I'm a delivery man. I don't like that way of telling the story. No, the way I see it is Boots gets that heart and he delivers it back to its owner, gives it to the giant. Once the giant has his heart back, his power diminishes, his size diminishes, and he becomes a mere mortal man, bent with compassion and racked with remorse. But however that may be, fairy tales like that are always on my mind as I'm driving around the land because they carry with them familiar patterns, and many of you know them. The hero or the heroine is always setting off on their journey and having moments to share small acts of kindness, to harvest the overladen tree, to milk the swollen cow, to break bread with the hungry stranger, to comb the thorny nettles out, whatever it is. All of these stories, for whatever problems we might have with them, and they certainly are problems of heteronormativity and gender bias and patriarchy and just plain goofiness, these stories are always reminding us this one truth, that the path to the recovery of the heart is strewn with small acts of kindness. Here is a piece of your heart. Feel your humanity. Be at peace.